Welcome to the Past Lives Cafe. I am your host, Keone, an intuitive energy worker and acclaimed past life regressionist. Come with me as we journey through the spiral of time to forgotten places. I am excited to have today with me a published author and a passionate podcast host of Safe Space with Cheyenne. Cheyenne Moore believes in creating a safe space to elevate others' life lessons and teaching many topics of human expansion along the way. Hello, Cheyenne. Please tell us all about your spiritual journey and how you and I ended up having this discussion.
Thank you so much for having me. A lot of big questions right off the bat, so I'm going to try to bullet point them the best I can because we could talk all day about the last 6 years of my life. It has been truly a journey. I have an absolute love for QHHT, not only based on my personal experience with it, but just reading all of Dolores Cannon's work and doing brainwave research myself. Like, what does theta do? What does alpha do? What does gamma do? It was another level of loving not only every human, but the human in me and how my body works. So I was really excited to come on your show and talk about this. And then when I got your questions today, you're like, tell me about your spiritual journey. I'm like, how do I condense this? Okay. I like to hopefully talk about it in the most grounded format that I can. Over the years, like, it started off as like I had a spiritual awakening. Greg Brayton calls it an Akashic remembering, because you're just unraveling and going back to your true state. You're not necessarily becoming a new person. You're going back and developing the parts that you left behind. So we get into like soul fragmentation, masking as far as mental health, and you're really just going back to who you were and what you wanted as a child. Who was I before the world got me, and what did I love before the world got me? And it was music, writing, puppy dogs, and running around in the country, playing in creeks, being with nature. I think all of us on a spiritual journey, we have little taps from the divine over our lives that maybe at the time our logical brain wants to kick out. And then in retrospect, we're like, oh my gosh, that was you. And there's other times where you get dick punched by the divine. And that is my story. I have both the little inklings, and then I have the boom, you're going to wake up today thing. So I just actually celebrated my 6-year anniversary of my spiritual awakening. It's April 15th. I say 14th and 15th, but 15th is when I celebrate it. And it just so happened that I woke up 2 weeks before my wedding. And if anybody's had a spontaneous Kundalini awakening 2 weeks before your wedding, it basically feels like somebody gave you shrooms and forgot to tell you.
Good timing.
Great timing. It really was. So I had just lost the career that I had built up for 8 to 10 years. I was a manager in the service industry for a wonderful company that I still love to this day. But the person I was, the decisions I was making, and even the people that were my mentors were just not the proper mentors. It wasn't a place for me to grow. I remember dreaming about like having time to journal and write and go and do like a yoga certification and sit in nature. And what would it be like if I could feel happy the way I feel in meditation in my job? And the more that I would do these things and then go to work became so miserable. So for the darker part of my career, like I remember the person sitting in front of you would come out in spurts, or maybe around the right people. Music was a huge part of my life growing up. I was always around it. I definitely took it for granted, like it was always going to be there. So when I moved to Kansas City the first time to go into corporate management, I would get invited to shows and I would refuse to go. Not because I didn't love music, but because I knew I was going to be so miserable when I went back to work the next day, because that made me so happy. I've always been very introspective. What am I doing here? It really did feel like a stepping stone, obviously, with the retrospect that I have. But at the time, I was not the person that sits in front of you. I was very jaded. I was very rigid. My sarcasm could sting you in a way a dark empath could. And I didn't give a shit about your feelings. I'm your manager. You have to listen to me and I don't care. Like, there are people that I cared about, and there are people that were very manipulative and a pain in my ass. And I acted out on that. And I felt good about it too, from a testimony standpoint.
Because you were miserable and it just gave you something palpable and someone tangible to react to.
To say that you're unconscious and you have so many people telling you that's who you are. So I had so many people telling me for years, she's just going to tell it like it is. She's a very blunt person. It's not that she doesn't care about your feelings, but this is how she sees it, and she's not going to hold back. So if you think about sitting in a group of people and something happens and everybody in the group sits and they tell their truth, but they're not actually going to speak up about it to the problem. I'm the person in the group that's going to stand up and be like, okay, you guys can be little bitches and talk amongst yourself, and I'm going to go directly to the problem, and I'm going to tell them how we feel. And that's how I was all of my life. Like, I would be standing up for people. I would be standing up for what was wrong, getting into a lot of trouble because we get into the respect your elder misdirected quote that I have found. I really didn't like who I was, but I also didn't know who I was, because in my bio, you'll see that I grew up in 2 different households, 2 completely different lives. Even though they mended together in a Midwestern aspect, there were still a lot of differences. So I would be like clocking out of one life and then clocking into another. Here we don't go to church. Sometimes we do. We have a Catholic background. Here we go to church every Sunday. It's a Baptist background. We don't curse. We don't drink. We're very respectful here. Yes, you can curse over here, but don't go crazy. Musical. There's so many aspects of both sides of my childhood. And then on top of that, we were built by a community of people. It was where aunts and uncles had a hand in it, and grandparents raised us, extra babysitters, friends, families, so many chefs in the kitchen of building me and my personality. And I didn't really think about any of this. I really was unconscious. So a couple weeks before my wedding, I was feeling not like a bride should feel. And it's not that I hadn't explored anything like spiritual before, because I had what I would call like my first Kundalini awakening when I was 20. And it was a very private and expansive experience that I still have trouble actually vocalizing the story to this day. But because of that experience, that very short little bubble phase, I was directed to information about it. And we didn't have Google at the time. We had Ask Jeeves. Do you remember that search engine?
I do remember Jeeves. He was our internet butler.
Yes,
I do remember him.
And you can text him too if you had a question. I thought it was the coolest thing ever. I'm like the worst part of my teen years of my life. I'm really struggling to transition. I've already dropped out of college. I went on tour with my boyfriend's band afterwards, which I think is a thing you should do if you're going to drop out of college, but that's just my journey. And
sounds great.
Yes, it really was. It really, really was. But still, you have the math gang in your life and the personality, the good parts of you, who everyone thinks you are. And then you have this undertow. So this undertow was coming and just pulling on me and dragging on me. And I have no concept of emotional regulation. All the terminology that we get today for mental health is not a thing. So if anybody's listening, they're like, oh, I wish I would have got my shit together when I was 19. Babe, we didn't have a curriculum. It was not built, and it was completely out of touch for a lot of us. So for me, my protective element was that sarcastic bitchiness. I will speak up for you. You come for me first. I'm going to give it back to you type thing. And I knew there was a soft, sweet girl underneath, but I was also terrified to put that out into the world, because it just seemed so often that I felt weak being that nice person, or I felt like I was taken advantage of or walked over. So I definitely had a very hard shell over me. When my career went away, so did my identity, because I came out of a very abusive relationship and I went straight into working for this company. And this company's family values, their training, the way that they really brought you in and made you feel good about yourself to work there, and even the opportunity. I gave myself over to this company for almost 10 years. And I was happy to do it because they gave me opportunities to travel all around the United States, even internationally, training. I was the head of training teams. When I moved away, I was like, oh, I don't have to process anything that I ever dealt with in my past. So I'll just move away and move on with my life. That bit me in the butt a few weeks before my wedding because the same energy that had awoken me into my tragic life at 19 and 20 years old, that same energy was coming back. I guess I've always been a little out there. I noticed the energies. I've seen ghosts since I was a kid and I've been okay with it. I've always known that there's more out there. So when that energy came back to me and enveloped me like a flyleaf song, I was like, oh, something's coming, something big, something transformative, something I don't even have definition for, but I do trust this energy. I just don't know what you're doing here 2 weeks before my wedding because I don't have time for this shit. But that doesn't matter when it comes to the divine.
They really don't care when they show up, do they?
No, they don't. Like when it's time to wake up, it is time to wake up. My mother-in-law invited me to do a yard sale with her, and we were just sitting there chatting. I'm sure like you love visiting psychics all through your life, whether you're like traveling or you're like, oh, look, there's a palmistry sign. Let's go get our palms read. Like I'm that person too. And it's definitely because that belief system isn't really allowed where we grew up. There's not a lot of that anywhere. It's extremely conservative. Everything, if it's not Jesus, it's the devil. And you really grow up, even if half your life is like that, you grow up with that in your subconscious. It's not like you're going to disappoint God. Your family is going to disown you in a sense. They're going to look at you with judgment and they're going to condemn you for going outside of the Holy Bible. I hate to just stick it to like Christianity because it isn't. It's Methodist, it's Baptist, it's in so many little boxes is what I call religion. And I grew up in so many of them that I was extremely conflicted, but I also knew that when Hocus Pocus came on every year, I was just enthralled by it.
Absolutely. You've hit the nail on the head, regardless of Catholicism, Mormonism, with all of the different branches that lead back to Christianity. The bottom line was fear.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for saying that. So yes, the fear was, but great thing is we were given footprints in the sand when we were kids. Before I really ever remember going to a church, I remember getting the footprints in the sand poem. And we got it because my mother's sister had passed away a month after I was born, and that was on her funeral program. So that poem became like a staple in our family. So the first time I met Jesus wasn't in a church. It was footprints in the sand. So let me get this straight. There's a really nice guy that looks like a hippie that I can talk to whenever I want, and he's never going to be mad at me, and he's always going to be there to love me and protect me. From a child's mind, cool, I have an invisible best friend. So I talk to Jesus all the time. People would never know it, especially in my darker days. They would be like, that girl needs Jesus. And me and him would just be sitting there cackling together. I might have been smoking a joint while I did it, but who cares, you know? I wasn't there for their condemning nature. The confusion of religion really messed me up when the awakening happened, but I trust the energy so much that when I was sitting there with my mother-in-law, she said, did I ever tell you about the psychic I went to ask about my future and your future? And I looked over because if you saw my mother-in-law, you wouldn't think this woman goes to psychics. But apparently, she was going to this metaphysical fair, and she goes and sees the same psychic over and over and over. Her favorite woman. I remember the energy going up my spine. I always feel those pings. I call them little epiphanies. And I was like, tell me about this psychic. She said, yeah, she spoke of you. You always got to audit. Are they just telling her what she wants to hear? Is she going to tell a detail that maybe she shouldn't know about me? So...
validating, but scary.
It is. In her reading, basically, she was asking, she was really checking up to see if I'm the one. You know what I'm saying? The psychic let her know that I was an empath and I would be good for the family and I would be good for her son. I just knew that I always struggled with absorbing everybody's energy around me and then acting it out almost. Like I would be a perfect mirror for everybody's BS. I went through that a lot in my life. I know you know what I'm talking about.
I definitely do. I thought being an empath meant something different than what it is. But I've come to realize that what I thought was a coping mechanism, scoping out the room to see who's in a bad mood, who's in a good mood, what potential personality traps we have to avoid for the day. I thought everyone did that.
Same. Yeah, therapy will be like, oh, you suffered a childhood trauma where people weren't there for you. So then you had to scope out the safety, which I'm not saying that's not true. I'm just saying you're leaving out the spiritual aspect of it.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Yes, I believe that in a way, but I've been like this from inception.
Yep.
So, wait, a psychic told you I was an empath, which to me, I was like, she's a real one. She's got a real connection, and I got a real problem. I need to talk to this lady now. And again, this is like a traveling like every 3-month fair. So she lives out of town. I have no idea if I can contact her, but I need to speak to her right now, please. And she's like, well, let me just go see when the fair is. And lo and behold, synchronicity speaks so loud. The fair started that day for the next 3 days. I was within a 15-minute radius of this woman who had spilled the tea about my spiritualness to my mother-in-law. I'm really sorry, but I have to go. I drove there immediately. She told me what she looked like. And my favorite part about it was she didn't read with like oracle or tarot cards. She read with playing cards. That's another thing that I think is really important because she sees lines and symbols that she has a language built up with her guides. And she works with St. Jude directly. St. Jude stands behind her and moves through her. It's a beautiful thing. She's actually a dear friend of mine now. But the original meeting with her, I sat down in front of her and this woman just looked through me. I do not claim intuition at this time. I do not claim clairsenses. I know nothing about spiritual awakening. I am a fawn of a forest. And I am sitting in front of this woman with my heart shoved to the back of my chest. It's about to split through my spine. And she's looking down the cards and she's like, didn't you say you're getting married soon? Does not look like a heart of a gonna get married soon woman. I got some things on my mind that I really need to talk about. My heart felt like there was a rope on the other side and there was someone pulling my heart in the back of my chest. It wasn't me, but I also don't understand heart expansion, heart opening. I emphasize zero definition besides what I wrote down in my notebook at 20 years old, and I haven't found that notebook yet. So I sat there and had a very expansive and very undeniable reading with this woman where she not only pulled out the definition for what was going on with me spiritually, the something that I was holding inside me since I was a child. She pulled a memory out that I forgot about until she said it. And I was like, there's no way, shape, or form you could know this. It opened me up in such a big way. And she let me know, yeah, you're awakening. Like, you're about to just go, I don't have time for, I'm not getting married. I continued to walk around the fair, and I found this beautiful glowing tent. And if anybody would have saw that tent, they would have walked in, even if it said, danger, don't come in. The tent was so bright, and I was like, what the hell is this? And there was a woman there, she was doing... It's like biofeedback. She did her own system, but you put your fingers in, it scans your basically auric field. She gives you a printout to show you where your chakras are and 47 pages of amazing information. Then she has a frequency machine with quartz crystals for each chakra. And you put binaural beats on, you lay on the bed, and the quartz crystals with basically colored lasers are moving all through your body. Ooh, spirit and science, let's do this. So I'm surrendering and releasing all these really heavy things in my mind. This person, I would say, that's like pulling on my heart space, this doubt, this fear, this who am I, what's going on? And I lay on the bed, and as the frequencies move through my body, I'm convulsing on the table. Not dramatic, but my body is doing this involuntarily. The investigator in me is like, what's happening? I felt amazing after that. I ended up calling a woman that had been a wonderful mentor for me, a medicine woman. I call her, and she also has sight. And I call her as a favor for a friend. And she goes, "Oh, honey, are you okay? You're waking up." There's a third person that day to talk to me about the awakening. Because not only is it really hard for your left brain to understand invisible things, but the lady from the BioWell technology gave me a sheet of paper of my chakras that I wrote about in a notebook at 20, but could not just comprehend like invisible energy centers, like whatever. Close the book, move on with life. Here's my chakras on a printed out scientific piece of paper. Between the psychic, I also went to a birth chart reader 2 weeks before that. I should have said that, but this is question one. I'm really trying to get through this. The birth chart reader, the psychic, the BioWell person, and now this woman that I've been working with for a year on herbalism, natural remedies, and indigenous rituals. They all said the same thing about my heart chakra. They all said the same thing about my energy, about my awakening. I am a believer in synchronicity and not coincidence. So I was just like, okay, I'm just going to sit down on the ground and I'm going to close my eyes and I'm just going to talk to God, whatever God is to me, because I'm still struggling with that terminology. So I laid there on the floor and I did a little bit of yoga to move my body around. I don't know what's going on. Something's happening. Something's opening up. And I could feel my heart expanding and what I now know is a heart chakra expansion and a third eye blowing open. But when you don't know it, it's extremely terrifying and you feel like you need to go to a psych ward, or like I said, somebody gave you shrooms and forgot to tell you. At this point, it felt like acid. And then I heard surrender in my head. And I was like, fine, I surrender. Please, please let me go. Break this. Break all of this. If this isn't me, just break it. It was such a moment of surrender where even my body was moving and getting all of this cracked energy. Like I was a vase that was just breaking. And it was beautiful because I was in pain and I was in bliss, but I was crying and I felt free, but I felt scared at the same time. I felt like I was a butterfly that just busted out of a cocoon. I didn't even know I was in the cocoon. And I have to get married in 2 weeks and I have no definition for any of this shit. So it's kind of scary. So I went to sleep that night. I didn't tell my husband anything because my husband's a supremely normal person. And
why do we always end up with the normies? I don't know why that is.
He's got to do a lot of the physical stuff, right? He makes sure that stuff is put together. And I definitely have my role to play in that too. But Landon came in so strong with the provider role and the, okay, you're breaking. I'm just going to make sure like rent's paid. So I have a tremendous amount of gratitude for what Landon has been to me in the last 6 years, because I would have probably been homeless if that were the case. I truly could not properly function consistently in society at the time that this was happening. It's like, you think you have one awakening. You think you have one dark night of the soul. You think you only have to judge your subconscious one time. And then you're like, oh, I'm going to go be a guru. No, that's not the plan. I finally woke up because I had the craziest prophetic dreams the next like 1 to 4 nights. And I have in previous childhood things, I've seen stuff in my dreams and it had come true. So again, that resonance of that inner child was coming back and connecting to me. So I rolled over and I told my husband everything. And I just said everything as calm as I could. I said, hey, this is what happened when I went to see your mom. He knows that I'm into the spiritual stuff, but not the level that I was. I said, this is what I saw in my dream last night. This is what's happening to me. This is how I feel. But I want you to know, if you don't want to marry me, you don't have to marry me, because I don't think this is going to stop anytime soon. I've called one of my best friends who also went through a spiritual awakening about 4 years before I did. And I watched her online and I was like, oh, this girl's losing her mind. But she wasn't. She was going through the same like energetic cleansing that now I found myself in. So I called her quick and I was like, I think what happened to you is happening to me. And she was like, I am on my way. And I hadn't talked to this girl in years, but she was like a childhood best friend of mine that we had lost touch with. I need definition. I'm going to lose my mind with what's going on with all of this. And she's like, I got you. And she literally saved my life, staying with me and teaching me all the things. I would be like, this is what's coming up. And she's like, that's what this is called. And I would have a notebook and I would be writing down spiritual hashtags. I'm going on Instagram and reading memes and looking at everybody before me and what book should I read? You're so hungry when you wake up, right? I don't know how good of a bullet point that is because I could continue to go on with that. But because that happened to me, fast forward a few years when I got better footing on my ground, I met so many amazing people in the spiritual community that not only like my love for all these people that have helped me, my slow process of bridging the spirit and science, but also the undertow of me as suicide ideation that has been a very dark best friend with me my whole life from a very young age. And writing and music were the two channels that really helped resuscitate me over and over and over. So when you go through the dark night of the soul, all of that stuff comes up. And I knew that I was in danger of ending my own life, like consistently through the process. And I knew that what had happened to me, if that happened to somebody where I came from, they would end up in a psych ward and it would be called psychosis, potentially split personality, DID, like you name it, like a lot of really big things, which I'm not going to say that's not possible. I'm just going to say we're leaving the spiritual out of a lot of Western medicine. So I figured, go back to your inner child. What do you want to do? You always want to be a writer. I'm going to be a New York Times bestselling writer, and I'm going to write about my experiences. I'm going to publish my poetry. I'm going to lay it all out on the table, whether I'm the hero, whether I'm the villain. I'm all the characters, right? So I'm going to pick up the pieces on the ground that I want to be me, and then I'm going to write about the others because I'm not ashamed of all the things that I've done. I was unconscious until the age of 28. And then my life turned into a rainbow spectrum. I'm going to do what I want to do when I was a kid, which is speak with my gift of gab. And I'm just going to find my way back to me. And whatever falls away in that meantime, I'm going to send it away with love. And there are things that have fallen away from me, but I don't know where it fits. So when it fits, you bring it back to me type thing. And it's definitely been a journey. I have had so much fun reconnecting with the right hemisphere of my brain, which would be the feminine aspect. And I have really just been through a crazy journey. It's not, oh, it's been love and light and it's so blissful and I love incense and crystals. I'm like, I feel like I've died like 10 times. I feel like I could have physically taken my own life a good 3 times out of it. And I just like being transparent about that because there's too much saturation in any spiritual conversation where people are using very big words that normal people do not understand. Like if you go to someone and you're like, I'm going to hold space for you, and they've never heard that in their life, it doesn't really mean anything to them. Starting the podcast really saved my life because I knew that there were more people that had went through experiences, not necessarily exactly like mine, but they had that transition. They connect with the collective, the all.
You're absolutely right. I think everyone's spiritual awakening is completely unique and completely the same. The prompt is different. The wake-up call trigger is different for each of us. The intensity of holy, I have been walking around with blinders on my whole life feeling is the same. I hear it every time I talk to someone, no matter what it is. And I loved how you said, Cheyenne, that you had kind of small inklings along the way. Mm-hmm. And there are some people that just builds over time and they start putting 2 and 2 together. And then that intense feeling of, oh my gosh, my eyes are finally opened. It appears to be just as strong in them as it is in those of us who had that dark night, which to your point is a lot longer than 24 hours. And questioning, why am I here? What am I supposed to do with this? And why is this so painful?
Existential. You can creep into nihilism before you ever creep into bliss when you're getting into it. I would try to explain it to my friends that would ask me about it. And I was on the phone with my friend explaining life lessons and karmic contracts and all of these things and moving through. I thought I did a really good job explaining every moment is magic. Every moment is beautiful. We should be playing. We should be stressed so much. And his takeaway was, oh, so like none of it really matters. And I didn't even have context for nihilism at the time. I've had those thoughts, but never the definition. Then I was just like, no, everything you do matters. It just feels boring because you're used to being a multi-dimensional being that can do this really quick. But now it's like a tortoise on marijuana when it comes to manifesting and learning. And this free will that all the religions talk about, oh my gosh, you actually have it by choice, day by day. Am I going to take the left or the right? Am I going to keep this vice? Am I going to kick it out? Am I going to write that book? Is it going to stay a dream? Every choice you make opens up, I'd say, like a multiverse of opportunities. Yeah, the future's there, right? But you're molding the future every step you take. And that is not taught enough. Free will is taught like a mystical sense. You have it, but you don't.
It is taught as a concept and not a verb. My sister one time said, you have a choice to be happy.
Yes.
And I thought, yeah, but these terrible things are happening. She's like, that's a choice for you to think about it that way.
Yeah, but when you're that down in the darkness and someone tells you that, you want to punch them in the face.
I may have.
Just do. Yeah. I may have, and it was probably last week. But loving the truth. Thank you so much.
Did you, throughout this awakening or remembering, did you see yourself in a past life? Or what prompted you to even pick up Dolores Cannon's books and even pursue a QHHT session?
Wonderful question. I was born with dangerous curiosity. And when it came to anything in the spirit realm, I think once you wake up to synchronicity and realize that when you're a baby, you do have somebody like guiding you towards information and towards people. I think the misconception is if you get guided to somebody that they are a safe person, and that is not the case. I was guided along to meet a bunch of people. I met idols and I met anti-idols. I met people that strengthened my intuition and I met people that strengthened my discernment into what to look out for as far as poison practitioners and people who wanted to siphon your light off you. And that's really hard to go through when you're going through the dark night of the soul, because I've noticed people put other people on pedestals based on how long they've been in the community, what certifications they have, especially if they go to a healing event, whether it's Reiki or whatever you want to do. There's like a subconscious pedestal where you're like, oh, that person pulled a dragon out of my ass last week. So, they're powerful.
Yeah, there's a part of you questioning, am I feeling this because I'm supposed to? Or am I feeling this because it's happening? I know exactly what you mean.
Exactly. I want to believe this so bad, but how do I integrate this into real life? So again, back to writing. I just wrote all of it down into a notebook. I allowed myself to be open. I allowed myself to be, for a lack of a better term, kind of crazy about it. Pretend you moved to a new town. And in order to know your new town, you have to submerge yourself into the culture of the town. That's what I did with every modality that I came across. On top of that, the show was about showcasing people's modalities. So every time I would get a guest, they would tell me what they're doing. And QHHT keeps popping up. I'm just going to start reading Dolores's research because I was already studying the body through yoga certification. I was already obsessed with brainwaves. Theta is literally my favorite brainwave. Besides gamma, there is absolute healing frequency and power in theta. When it came to like past life stuff, I had realized there were cyclical things coming up that didn't necessarily feel like they originated in this lifetime, but it definitely felt like I came in with them. From a young age, I believed in karma and reincarnation, which is another reason I really struggled in the church.
That is amazing that now that you have the words to put to those feelings or understandings that you had as a child.
It's called esoteric for a reason. It means hidden. It means hidden for a reason because you have to have a certain level of consciousness to access the information. And it's just as simple as a parable in the Bible where Jesus talks about not casting pearls onto swine. Do not cast hidden or higher consciousness information to the lower realms. And we know that from Plato's allegory of the cave. If you go and you try to awaken somebody, they will just call you crazy. They'll get mad at you. Like, how dare you break the life that I want to live, which is their free will, pulling all these spiritual labels that come with it. What clairs do I have? Do I want to be a Reiki master? No, that sounds weird to me. But if that's what you want to do, I support you. I just want to be Cheyenne. I just want to write my experiences. I want to learn piano again. I want to sing. I want to raise my daughter. I want to garden. Yeah, do I want to talk to people and help people that are just waking up? In a sense, but not like, I'm your healer. I have your answers. I'm your connection to source. I want to redirect you to you. I had the same psychic reader who I went to the first time find the same wound. She found the wound in a tarot reading after she had found the wound in a Reiki session. And I had been, it wasn't QHHT, I was just hypnotized for a healing session. And I was able to get the vision back in the meditation. So basically, I found the tribe that I was a part of, but I really can't remember who it was now. Basically, I was indigenous. We were being raided by a bunch of white people. And I thought that I was killed by the invaders, but I was actually killed by someone in my tribe while it was going on to make it look like I was killed by somebody else. This woman was a very jealous woman. Okay. So she took an arrow and she stabbed me right over my left ovary. And then she basically tried to kill me. And the person that I was with came over to try to save me. I do find it weird that I had always had issues my whole life with my left ovary, whether it wasn't ovulating properly, cysts only grew on that ovary, a bunch of physical issues with that specific ovary. And then I, months later, go interview the tarot reader for her episode, and we do a reading afterwards, and she's looking down at the 6 of diamonds. Do you know when there's an arrow in your left ovary still? Tell me about this arrow. Who made this arrow? And she's like, it's an actual indigenous arrowhead from the tribe that you were in. And I was like, this has to be real. These women don't even know each other. They don't even know that I had these readings. Like, I found this wound 4 months ago and I've been working on it. Like, I don't need someone to pull the arrow out. I need myself to realize it's there to heal this part of me.
And funny you should say that about the self-healing ability. Were you able to focus any sort of healing properties to that area?
Oh, yeah. I did Reiki training. With all due respect, I think I took Reiki from a demon. I'm not going to lie. She dabbled in things that you don't dabble in as a Reiki practitioner. And I say that because I'm transparent and my show's called Safe Space with Cheyenne. So if you're a poison practitioner and I worked with you, I'm telling on you because you can hurt people. Anyways, they had good concepts. They had concepts that they twisted for their own human desires. But I did learn a lot, but it wasn't my first time around Reiki. So it was easy to investigate the BS in the situation. And when I worked with a couple other people, they would be like, you need to work on your feminine. You need to work on your feminine. The feminine is so oppressed and so broken. Not only are you picking up on the stuff I'm actively working on when I leave this classroom, you're picking up on the whole collection. They all wave their hands over my ovaries. And then I got with the safest practitioner that I still would go to this day. I would be like, can you help me? I don't need you to pull the arrow out. That's between me and me. I need you to validate what I'm seeing, and I trust your channel. So I went back to her and she put her hand over my ovary and she said, this is a wound that I could take out easily for you, but I would be overstepping what they want from you. So just to remind you, You don't need anybody. You don't need me. You don't need tarot readers. You have it in your hand. You need the belief. If you don't have the belief, dig deeper into the subconscious and find out where that belief comes. It might not be this lifetime. That's when I get into a lot of throat chakra trauma, because I've had a bunch of that while I was a child and all through just working in a man's world. Through the years of all the spiritual people that I've worked with, they're like, do you know how many times you've been killed for speaking the truth? No, but that makes sense. It wouldn't be the first time that I was hit or struck for telling the truth, but knowing that you were telling the truth and then somebody was just mad at you and tried to shut you down is extremely healing, because you almost think you're wrong when you get gaslit for so long. I've been killed a lot in past lives for sure, and it either had to do with jealousy or speaking about stuff.
Right. Against the norm or against what they wanted you to say.
Like the status quo, I think is probably the best way to say it.
It's an interesting thread, because that was one of the questions that I really wanted to ask. And one of the things that I always ask my clients, which is, what is the thread that connects, whether I see them several times and we go through different past lives together, or if I do a past life reading and then they have a QHHT session, regardless, I'm always looking for the thread, because until we find that, then an arrow in an ovary is just a one-time anomaly. No. It wasn't just a one-time anomaly. You were hurt because you were a threat, and they threatened your legacy.
My own tribe. That is what was astounding about it. When I first heard about past life regression, I had looked for a practitioner when I was like 20 or 21, and it was nowhere near me. So I did not do that. I found this website, this meditation, and I will never do a past life guided meditation by myself again, because I was laying in my bedroom. I walked down the stairs, I opened the door, and I woke up as an indigenous person with the same patterns on my feet, and the teepee was on fire. The great thing about that little breadcrumb is years later, it was easier for me to believe, because I remembered the beadwork, I remember the fire. But when the story connected that it was someone of jealousy in my tribe that had killed me, it was another woman who literally stabbed me in the middle of a battle. I bet this person is incarnated in this lifetime as me. I have no doubt that this woman exists in my lifetime, and I bet that she has a lot of hate towards me for a reason she doesn't even understand.
I just think it's interesting that the ovarian wound is an attempt to hurt someone's legacy or to shut you down from speaking in the future. The other thing that I find super interesting is, as you're coming into your femininity and opening up that other side of the brain, you're also realizing the injury to femininity. Anything female reproductive related is so tied to hormones, is so tied to our intuition, our sense of oneness that comes to us a little more easier, probably because of that receptive nature. That's my convoluted theory anyway. But you also said that you started out before this process of awakening with, it felt like very strong male energy, masculine energy. You spoke your truth. You were in people's spaces. You were going to tell it like it is, which is assertive.
True. Yeah. If I was a man, I would be worshipped right now. I've always been guided by a higher power, whether I had the definition for it or not. And because of that, I can sit here to this day and have these very vulnerable conversations with you. I'm not a love and light person. I'm a full spectrum healer and feeler. And I think that every emotion is valid. I just think that there are certain emotions that need to be transmuted through a proper channel.
I think that was one of the things that awoke for me was compassion. I always could tell what was going on and feel what was going on. But when the dude, the woke manager hater, was pounding his chest, my initial reaction was, first, you hurt my feelings. And now I'm mad about that. Now I want to throat punch you, right? So that would be the initial human reaction. After the awakening, I began to look at him like a walking wound. And I wanted to say, honey, I know you don't feel respected. And I know you feel emasculated a lot of times in life because you've been raised with some outdated role models. And this situation right here has just pushed you right out of your comfort zone.
I realized in the beginning that was my new defense mechanism where I see you. Here, I'm going to give you a free mini reading about yourself. I want to show you why you treated me that way. And it wasn't out of ego or out of spite. You've never had someone tell you the truth before, have you? You don't know who you are, do you? And it was like this ultimate love for people. But my husband had the same conversation with me, but mine was, it wasn't just how people were physically treating me after the awakening. It was the telepathy afterwards. I'm hearing of their moms in the hospital, their boyfriend just cheated on them. They don't fucking want to be here, blah, blah, blah. And then it's like that love of the collective from a soul point where you're just like, Ram Dass says, treat everybody like they're God dressed up in drag. One of my favorite things ever. Like when you actually try to embody that, that is when you get that pushback the most. When you want to embody that compassion, that's when you're going to get combative people to come back and really test, like turning the cheek in an embodiment.
I've seen a lot of clients for QHHT. Many of them have had some level of self-loathing that they either could identify why, but didn't know how to get out of it, or just generally believed that they were not worthy of continuing on their life path. There was only one person that had spoken out loud suicidal ideation. And when I asked them, do you feel like you want to hurt yourself? They said no, but it would come and go. But the thing I noticed, the thread through all of these clients, which maybe is my wake up call to a certain extent, is the fact that we are, and Cheyenne, this branches all ages, all genders, all sexual orientations. I don't care how you package the body, they're all saying the same thing. They hate themselves. They don't see the point. They feel like life is a punishment to a certain extent because of the pain that they're experiencing, whether it's external, internal, or both. And they look for a past life regression to help see them through.
Yes. I think that's powerful. I've been studying many forms of religion since I've been in the church, and just recently in the past couple of years, because I always wanted to find like epiphany or reincarnation or anything. And I found in really, really early Christian texts that it'll actually talk about reincarnation. And then the theory there is that they took it out because people looked at it as their own reset. I've gone too far. I've messed up too much. I've sinned too much. So I'm just going to kill myself and start the clock over. So as much as I want to think everything is for control, I do think reincarnation was one taken out of the Bible to separate itself further from Hinduism, since most of Christianity's basis is paganism, Hinduism, and Zoroastrianism. When it comes to Dolores's work about suicide, because my QHHT session is actually on my podcast on Spotify. I was hypnotized for 2 hours, my connection from the past life to my present life, and then we asked my subconscious a bunch of questions for humanity. Dolores was talking about one thing that happens if a soul just keeps killing itself over and over and over. They take too big a bite out of their soul plan. It's like credit hours in college, right? Your spirit guide is like, I think you need like maybe 5 or 6 hours and like a part-time job. And they're like, I'm going to take 16 credit hours. I'm going to do a car payment, a cell phone, and work 60 hours a week. You're driving the train into a wall and you picked it with your free will and then you incarnated. So when it gets too much and these people just reincarnate over and over and over, they kill themselves, they kill themselves, they kill themselves. And that killing is like stained on your blueprint, not like in a negative sense, but let's kind of backpedal and figure out why you keep hitting your own exit plan. And she said there is a thing where they will reset a soul if it continues to kill itself over and over and over. And that is so rare that she has only met one in all of the hypnosis that she has done, that she met one soul that killed itself in so many lives, and then it was literally reset. So that's why this soul was struggling, because it came into this incarnation as like a baby first incarnation soul, but its whole blueprint was like translucent behind it of all of the other lifetimes that it was like, we can't do it. And as we all know with energy, it's going to transform. So to say that they could reset the soul, you're still going to have this translucent blueprint behind you of who you were. And that person was struggling with that. And there was a time in my journey where I was like, that's it. I'll just die. I'll kill myself. And I will go, hey, when I was on Earth, Dolores Cannon told me that if you kill yourself and you just literally don't even want to exist anymore, you guys will reset me. That's how crazy I allowed myself to be in my notebooks. I wasn't really going to do it in an instance, but I was like, where is the relief in this?
What you just said is perfect to the extent that most people don't want to die. They just don't want to continue. They need relief.
Yeah. It's just, there's so much. You know that Disney movie Soul? Did you ever watch that one?
Oh, no.
It's one of my favorites. Oh my gosh. Watch it and then email me, because you're going to be like, so there is a part where these souls are covered up with all like this dark stuff. So this team of basically ascended masters is what it looks like in the spirit realm or the astral realm. They go and they wrestle these guys because they turn into creepy black monsters. They wrestle them. They draw a circle around them. There's a lot of indigenous references. And then they sit and they start playing drums and singing to it. And all the layers start falling off and their true essence is there. And that's what I think the awakening is about from like a human consciousness standpoint, is who you are is not actually who you are. And if you go down the path of knowing thyself, there are plenty of biblical scriptures where Jesus will tell you, truly Aramaic translation, it's knowing yourself is knowing God. Knowing yourself, know thyself, in whatever translation that you want. When you know yourself, you get linked into the same like love that an artist writes a song about.
Yep.
When you think of the Beatles and they're like, all you need is love. I know people want to say they're on acid, but a lot of their music was written in an ashram after their first few albums. And they tapped into that divine frequency that a lot of people in this day and age are rising up to again. But a lot of the spiritual information could easily be inverted. The spiritual warfare is happening. That's a really cool dualistic perspective, and it is valid in the linear timeline that we live. You're building your intuition and you're building your discernment, and these were given to you. I did the scripture thing. I did the church thing when I was a kid. I went all the way around. I studied all the cultures that I could, all the languages that my tongue would let me twist into, and I came full circle back around. And I have a lot of Bibles. The old ones are so cool. Like, they just have so many cool hidden apocryphas that got kicked out by a bunch of other people. And now that I understand that it's more like symbolism and poetry and metaphors, now I understand why I started writing poetry in 4th grade and why I love allegories and why I can sit there and be like, oh, when the two become the one. That makes total sense to me. But if you're just unconscious and if you're not embodying scripture and you're just reading it because you think when you get to the gates of heavens, you're going to be like, guess what? I know Timothy 4:12 by heart. And they're like, yeah, but did you live it? I think we're coming into the consciousness level where you have to embody it. And that is really tough. So I'm not going to be like, this is the good place and there's a point system. But the Bible actually does say a lot of really cool things, but you have to have ears to hear it properly, and you have to have a sight to see it properly. And just to wrap this up, this is my favorite. If you look at the Berlin Codex or the Nag Hammadis, they house a little bit of Mary Magdalene's codex that was found with the Gospel of Thomas. When you start the part where she's like, Lord, I saw you in a vision the other day. And he said, good of you to not waver at the sight of me. She was like, how do people see visions? Do they see it in the mind or do they see it through the spirit? And he said, they do not see it through the mind nor the spirit. They see it like in between the two. If you put the hemispheres of your brain together, like when you pray, you're bringing the energy centers together and you're bringing it into your heart and all these energy centers. When you unify yourself, when you realize that overcoming duality is a part of realizing you're actually a part of the singularity, then you have eyes to see, then you have ears to hear, then you have a cheek to turn, and you understand so much more than what you were seeing when you were unconscious. And that is my favorite part about waking up, is being able to look at the Bible, being able to go into any church, being able to talk to anybody with any religious background and just look at them and ask questions and be curious. I don't have anything to prove to anybody, but there's also like a lot of other mundane 3D things I have to do that annoy me, like laundry and mopping.
Thich Nhat Hanh says, if you mindfully mop, then everything about that moment is important.
That's very true. And I mean, it really is about being in the present moment. And again, like sometimes I can do that. And then sometimes my hormones are like, I don't care. I'm on spiritual jargon right now. I just cleaned this mess up. I don't want to do it again. Really being human. You know, there's so many serious spiritual people out there. God, you are no fun for someone that can see devils and angels. Literally, like, relax. Okay? Good God. You know, and I've had that moment too where I was like, I think I'm just going to go live in an ashram. I think as long as people like you and people like me and all the other people in the community remain transparent about the fact that it's light and darkness coming together, it's not eradicating your shadow self. I know ego death's a big thing and that is temporary, but your ego could just put on like Hindu symbolisms and pants that are very loose fitting and start doing yoga and be like, I'm a vegan. And you think that's enlightened. And that's just a spiritual ego. And everybody goes through it. It's a rite of passage. And I just want to help people. I don't think you need your psych ward. I just think you need to sit down and dig out all that bullshit that's in you. Because I am you, babe. You are me. Plain and simple.
How can people get in touch with you?
Thank you for asking. I am active on TikTok under Safe Space with Cheyenne. You'll find all of my wonderful rabbit holes there. Right now, I'm decoding very historical churches that were built by the stonemasons. So those are really fun. If you want to listen to my podcast, I'm on all streaming platforms, specifically Spotify. And I also have a Facebook page called Safe Space with Cheyenne. If you need any questions where you don't want the world to see, I am truly a safe space. It is not just a brand. If you need to get something off your chest, if you need me to take something to the grave for you, hit my DMs on all my platforms. I'll be happy to not only encourage you to keep going, but I don't do public readings or anything like that anymore, but my channel is always open when I talk to people. So you get to talk to me, you get to talk to my higher self. So she'll probably recommend you a book, and I get to play Pictionary with her in my third eye. So that is probably my favorite part about talking to anybody that's sent my way. I don't want you to feel alone, and I can't hold your hand, and I'm certainly not your guru, and I'm not your source energy. But I can recommend you a really good book and a couple really good podcasts.
I love that. I am going to make sure that all of Cheyenne's information on how to reach out to her and follow her are posted in the show notes, and any of the books that we've discussed during this episode will also have links posted in the show notes. I thank you so much. You have honored me today. I've just loved talking to you, and I can't wait to talk with you again on the other podcast.
Yay! I'm so excited too, and I can't wait to have you on mine as well.
Yay! Thank you, my dear.
Thank you.
This concludes this episode of Past Lives Cafe podcast with Cheyenne Moore. If you or someone you know would like to discuss a past life experience on this podcast, please reach out to me at keone@quantumjourneygo.com. The enchantment continues on the Mystical Mermaid Lounge podcast that I co-host with Chloe Brown, a welcome space where we nourish the souls of all spiritual seekers. And remember, while we can't relive the past, together we can heal it. Thank you so much for listening. If you are interested in my services, visit me at www.quantumjourneygo.com or drop me a note at pastlivescafe.buzzsprout.com. Stay well and be present.